Rashmi ma'am, you can come.
A very namaskar to everyone, and on behalf of the Vidya family, I wish you all a very happy Gandhi Jayanti and thank you for being with us this evening. This is our 18th Vidya Knowledge Series webinar on the inspirational vertical, and our focus today is the head, the heart, and the hand, a tribute to Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhiji is revered the world over as the apostle of peace, as one of history's most transformative and inspirational leaders. Today, we also remember the great contribution of late Shri Lal Bahadur Shastri, our second Prime Minister, on his 96th birth anniversary. Albert Einstein said about Gandhiji, generations to come, it may well be, will scarce believe that such a man as this in flesh and blood ever walked upon this earth. We could not have found a more befitting person to give the Vidya family blessings on this very special day than the granddaughter of Gandhiji, Sumitra Kulkarni, the eldest daughter of Gandhiji's third son, Ramdas Gandhi. She grew up in Sevagram ashram with Kasturbaji and Bapuji. They would sleep out in the open on the ground with little Sumitra between them. She was 19 when Bapuji was assassinated. She's an author, a member of parliament, a civil servant at the center and in Madhya Pradesh, and she always believed strongly in the importance of values which citizens should inherit, and integrity and ethics that should inherit from their parents and from their teachers. It is her 91st birthday on the 5th of October, and I share a very inspirational, beautiful video message that she has sent for all of us.
Friends, age has caught on me and I do not quite feel confident. Had I been younger, I would have loved to be live with a gathering of women of such merit and achievements. Even then, when youth was my companion, I'm unsure if I could stand amongst achievers like you all. I am in awe of my daughter-in-law Neelu and how she multitasks and how functional and effective she is in managing and directing initiatives. So ladies, do allow me the privilege of sharing my thoughts in a recorded format. Although I have been asked to speak only about my grandfather Gandhiji, I do wish to share some of my own thoughts with you all because this platform is provided by Vidya and Elsa. I will share my thoughts on human capital of our nation. The foundation years are at the heart of the development of an awakened, involved, and responsible citizen. Therefore, the foundation years are an investment and are not a cost. They deserve our attention and care. The social moorings in which our children grow up necessarily contribute to their foundations in our linguistic, cultural, spiritual heritage. These foundations need to be reinforced by our schools. In the absence of such reinforcement, especially in the presence of non-native inputs, the struggle for identity increases as children progress into adulthood and as they traverse through life. Bapuji recognized this and embodied these thoughts in the founding principles of Nai Talim. I am picking those facets of Nai Talim that I think are most relevant today. Swavalamban or self-reliance. It is only through Swavalamban that we can hope to reduce human exploitation. Human exploitation is inversely proportional to Swavalamban. teach our children not to be afraid of working with our own hands for as many of their needs. Swachhata. This is to Bapuji was more than a physical hygiene and cleanliness, but in its full scope of as it embodies moral and financial cleanliness too. In 1942, when I visited Bapuji at Aga Khan Palace Prison, I was carrying a soiled handkerchief. The sweat and the grime from hands had soiled it. Bapuji told me to never be dirty nor carry dirty clothes. He washed my handkerchief and told me to carry two so that I would always have a clean handkerchief. Work towards Atmanirbhar society, which means self-sufficient. Children should be taught how to exercise swachhata and to choose local products. Children should be taught that fundamental duties supersedes fundamental rights. And finally, let me share a realization that I had in 1957 when I was a subdivisional officer of a tribal district of Madhya Pradesh called Chhindwara. I was the only woman among men colleagues. You all are at the heart of a fundamental but overdue transformation that is sweeping this planet, which is the realization that women need to be at the heart of decision making. In my own experience, I found that I was most effective as a leader when I did not copy the leadership style of my male colleagues, but instead I relied on my instinct as a woman. Good luck. I wish you all great success. This has been a rare privilege and I am grateful to it. Thank you. Jai Hind.
What my pranams and thanks to you, Sumitra ji. With so much wisdom and humility, you have inspired us with your message, and we will work towards implementing all your suggestions. A special thanks to her son, Sri Krishna Kulkarni, and daughter, Neelu, who make this possible for us today. So Mitra ji did mention Vidya and Elsa. Neelu Kulkarni and all our esteemed speakers and myself have a wonderful link in common. We are all alumni of the Lady Shri Ram College, New Delhi, and we call ourselves Elsas. Elsas are women leaders across professions, and this is largely because of the excellent mentoring, inspiration, peers, and the opportunity we got from our alma mater, LSR. Vidya truly believes that education entails the head, heart, and hand, and not just the 3 R's. Vidya focuses on life skills, on character building, and creating great citizens and leaders. From the onset, we have tried to put the seeds of the Gandhian way of being into our work and our ethos. At Vidya, we provide an outstanding, joyful, holistic education, an opportunity for every student to fulfill their dreams. Our mantra is educate, empower, and transform. And we hold hands with every Vidya student from the time they enter Vidya in kindergarten till they are employed. Our Vidya teachers work with a Gandhian approach, encouraging right attitude, self-discipline, tolerance, respect for others, especially for women, and the awareness of duties and their responsibilities. Vidya's holistic program lays emphasis on the culture of peace, oneness, human values. We celebrate diversity and our rich cultural heritage and citizenship. Gandhiji once said, the future depends on what you do in the present. So let me share a little bit about Vidya and what Vidya does. Vidya is a journey to educate and transform. And this picture was obviously taken before social distancing came into place. But we have a very happy group of children and they all absolutely love being at Vidya. It's a family that we all belong to. The next slide, please. Starting with 5 little girls, we have today educated about 3.75 children, youth, and women in 35 years. And our mission is to be the fountainhead of empowering and transforming lives through education. Our core is education, but we have some 500 teachers who are the pillars of Vidya who make it possible. Our approach, as you see here in this slide, is always been Gandhian: the head, the heart, and the hand. For us at Vidya, every student, every individual is encouraged and challenged to think and to be the change for themselves and for their families. We work on building confident, good citizens sensitive to the need of others. And for us, working with their hand and with vocational training and skills is as important as teaching them. The Vidya School Gurgaon is our biggest project. It's on 5 acres and it has 76,000 square feet of covered area. We have 1,100 students, plus we have a whole 300 students in NIOS, National Open School. These are dropout youth who we give a second chance. And we have close to 300 mothers who attend our program parallelly. We educate mothers of our children parallelly while we educate our girls and our children. Focus is on girls. And we are very proud of what the school has achieved. It's a role model school for the country, and we are looking forward to duplicating this across. We are now creating a school in Bangalore very soon, based on the lines of the Vidya School Gurgaon. We are proud that we have wonderful statistics to share with you. We have a zero dropout rate. 100% of our students like to go into higher education. As you know, every child at Vidya is a first generation learner. And we are also very delighted that 10% of our kids qualify Mensa. We have children who are graduates studying at one of the best colleges of the country. And we are hoping that, that this increases by leaps and bounds and that our children can be leaders of change in the future. 57 of our graduates of Vidya School this year are now going to university. What is our core? Our core, can I have the next slide? Thank you. So besides the school that we run, apart from our own school, we also work out of 44 government schools right across the country. These are, we call them the public-private partnership schools with the government. And we make sure that children from these schools stay in school and don't drop out. As you know, dropout is a big problem in our country. What do we focus on? We focus on English, computers, life skills. And we have several success stories about our children from government schools are doing exceptionally well and have made a mark and are going into, we are sponsoring them into colleges as well. With the schools, we also offer skills. Can I have the next slide, please? So skills are a very important part of our education, and especially for our women, where we offer them several vocational training skills, and we provide an NIT certification to almost every child who comes to Vidya, every youth and every woman, so that they allows them to earn even while they are learning. And we have self-help groups that have recently started by our women, set up entirely by themselves and run by themselves, with Vidya supporting them from the back. So it is a wonderful that they're now setting up their own. Yes. Next slide, please. A new tomorrow is what we all look forward to. And our dream is for Vidya is still to be recognized and still to be fulfilled. We want to see an India where every child gets a quality education and every youth a chance to succeed and every woman achieve economic and social independence. Our children have very large dreams and our effort is to make their dreams come true. And on this Gandhi Jayanti, I would like to really acknowledge all our wonderful children and need your blessings so that their dreams come true. What we are looking for, and we'd love your support, is we're looking for mentors and to guide our students. We can teach them, we can change their mindsets, but we need you to mentor them. And if you would like to do that, to kindly connect with us on our website or any other way, we'll be very happy if you can mentor one child at Vidya. We're also looking for phones and devices that can help them through these difficult pandemic times to work remotely. Sometimes one family shares one phone. So we're looking for work phones and working conditions. If any way you can help us, We'll be absolutely delighted. Thanks. I am honored to share a short video message for you from Dr. Arun Bharatram. Dr. Arun Bharatram is the chairman of the SRK group. He's chairman of Lady Shri Ram College and Shri Ram Schools and the SRF Foundation. The SRF Foundation flagship rural education program covers the education of 78,718 students across 21 locations in India. His wife, Manjuji, was a huge supporter of Vidya and mentored several Vidya schools. Arunji has always been a great supporter of the ELSA movement, for which I was privileged to be a part of. Dr. Arun Bharatram.
प्यारे बच्चों, नमस्कार। आज अक्टूबर 2 तारीख है। एक हम सबके लिए बड़ा शुभ दिन है। ये दिन जिस दिन हमारे देश के पिता महात्मा गांधी का जन्म हुआ था। और ये ऐसा दिवस है जिस पर हमें उनकी जो विचारधारा थी, उन्होंने जो हमको सिखाया था, उस पर हमें बार बार ध्यान देना चाहिए। तो आज मैं आपसे उनके बारे में कुछ टिप्पणियां करूंगा और आपको अपनी तरफ से बताऊंगा कि हम सब उनसे क्या सीखते हैं, क्या सीख सकते हैं और क्या सीखना चाहिए। सबसे पहले तो वो एक महान पुरुष थे जिन्होंने अहिंसा का नारा पूरी दुनिया को सिखाया। अहिंसा, क्योंकि मारपीट से, झगड़े से, लड़ाई से कुछ सिद्ध नहीं हो सकता। वो सिर्फ प्यार और अहिंसा से ही हो सकता है। बच्चों, मैं आपको एक और चीज़ बताना चाहता हूँ कि आपकी ज़िंदगी में आपके माँ बाप, आपके माताजी, पिताजी और आपके जो अध्यापक होते हैं, वो आपको जो शिक्षा देते हैं और आपको जो वैल्यू सिखाते हैं, वो आपकी ज़िंदगी में हमेशा बहुत काम आती हैं और उसी से अच्छे लोग बनते हैं। तो आपको हमेशा हमेशा अपने अध्यापकों को प्रणाम करना चाहिए और उनकी विनती मांगनी चाहिए कि वो आपको हमेशा सही रास्ता दिखाएं और आपको जो आगे बढ़ाते हैं ज़िंदगी में, उनको आप हमेशा धन्यवाद दें। तो आपके टीचर्स को मेरी तरफ से बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं और मैं चाहता हूं कि वो भी आपकी ज़िंदगी में जो एक बड़ा रोल प्ले करते हैं, वो उसको आप कभी न भूलें। धन्यवाद।
What a beautiful message to the children and the teachers of Vidya from Arunji. Thank you ever so much, Arunji. I hope you're watching. It gives me great pleasure now to introduce two very special women leaders, our speakers, who you're all anxiously waiting to hear, Dr. Meenakshi Gopinath and Miss Vinita Bali. Dr. Meenakshi Gopinath is an Indian educationist, political scientist, writer, and former principal of Lady Shri Ram College, New Delhi. She was the principal of LSR for 26 beautiful years. Her philosophy is primarily Gandhian. She is the founder and director of Women in the Security, Conflict Management and Peace, a non-government organization promoting peace and socio-political leadership amongst the women of South Asia. She is the recipient of numerous awards, notably the Padma Shri awarded by the Government of India in 2007 for her contribution to the Indian education sector. An outstanding guru, a teacher, a leader, MG, as she is affectionately known, is revered and loved by the thousands of alumni of Lady Shri Ram College, the ELSAs. She is a patron of the ELSA movement, and she believes that every ELSA blooms wherever they are planted. This is a blessing actually to all of us. And I'm proud to say that she is my mentor, and I'm honored that she's our speaker today. Miss Vinita Bali, former MD of Britannia, is a business leader who has worked globally and continues to be a member on international Indian boards and business nutrition and education, international and Indian. Vinita was awarded the Businesswoman of the Year Award in 2009 Economic Times Awards. In 2009, she founded the Britannia Nutrition Foundation. Vinita was amongst the 27 global leaders appointed by the UN in 2012 to improve maternal and child health. She has won several awards in forums nationally and internationally for her various contributions to business and society. A corporate guru with a heart of gold, always giving and making time for everything. Vinita is a distinguished Elsa and has a great passion for the environment and better nutrition. Vinita has visited Vidya and encouraged us always. We look forward to hearing you, Vinita. Closing remarks today are by another great Elsa achiever, Aditi Misra. She has 35-year career in education and she has taught in several DPS schools and is the principal of the DPS Sector 45 Gurgaon since 2001. A national awardee from the CBSE and has authored several books for children. Aditi is an important member of the management board of the Vidya School Gurgaon, and her contribution has helped to take the school to the next level. Thank you, Aditi. I now welcome Ankit, a Vidya teacher of Vidya Mumbai's communication officer. He's a human rights advocate and works with people with different backgrounds. Awarded the Global Diversity and Inclusive Leadership Award by the World HRD Congress, as well as he's addressed the UN Human Rights Council. Ankit is a Gandhian, has a Gandhian approach to teaching, and he will share this very soon with you. A few house rules before we start. Kindly put your questions in the Q&A box and your comments in the chat box. Thank you very much and enjoy this wonderful Gandhi Jayanti celebration with two great women. Over to you, Ankit. Thanks.
Namaste, everybody, and happy Gandhi Jayanti to everyone. Thank you so much, Rashmiji, for this opportunity and kind introduction. Well, if I talk about Gandhi in the classroom, an extension of it, Gandhi in leadership, I'll share few of my learnings which I have received over the years studying Gandhi. My interaction with Gandhi came for the first time when I was around maybe 9 or 10 year old, when my parents took me to birthplace of Gandhi, Kirti Mandir in Porbandar. Over there, my parents got me a 2 rupee book, a small book which had the life story of Gandhi. The same night, I could not sleep because I was so eager to read that book. At around 10:30, I started reading the book, and by the time I completed the last page of it, it was around maybe in the early morning. I read that book again, and that is how Gandhi came to me. I have always admired and loved Gandhi from the multiple perspective. Today, let me share few of my findings from the experience which Gandhiji had in his life. The very first and very close to my heart is the message of diversity and inclusion. गांधी जी जिस तरह से पूरे देश को अपने साथ एक साथ जोड़ सकते थे, ऐसा हालांकि कोई व्यक्ति था जो उसकी तरह से पूरे देश को जो विभिन्नताओं से भरा हुआ था उसको एक साथ ला सकता था. You would be surprised to know that in 1925, yes, in 1925, Gandhiji appointed a woman as a head of Indian National Congress, Shri Sarojini Naidu ji. Can you believe that in 1925, it was very difficult even in the United States to have a leader of a state as a governor who could be woman. We yet do not have a woman president in the United States. Or in many parts of the world in 1920s, women leadership was very rare. And that is when Gandhiji gave the head of Indian National Congress to a woman, Sarojini Naidu. Second example on diversity and inclusion can be found in early days of Gandhi when he was in South Africa, when he started in a magazine called as Indian Opinion. Do you know that this magazine Indian Opinion was published not only in one language but four languages? Yes, it was published in English, Hindi, Gujarati, and Tamil. Probably the first multilingual magazine published in the world. Second learning, which I really like about Gandhiji, is he never concentrated power with himself. He always made others the leaders. So many people we know today as the freedom fighters of our country are because they were supported, nurtured, and promoted by Gandhiji. Of course, we can talk about Nehru, Chacha Nehru, C. Rajagopalachari, or Sardar Patel, and many, many more. Sometime when you read Gandhiji and the life stories of other leaders, you will find that Sri Rajagopalachari was the head of Gandhiji, Pandit Nehru was the heart of Gandhiji, and Sardar Patel was the hand of Gandhiji. Third thing which I really like about Gandhiji is his availability. Friends, there were days Gandhiji did not speak because he followed the Maunavrata, silence. There were days he did not eat because he used to fast quite often. But there was a day when Gandhiji did not write. And which kind of letters used to come to Gandhiji? All sort of. Whether you have an agreement with Gandhiji, you have a disagreement with Gandhiji, you want to have a debate with Gandhiji, you could write anything. There are over 1,000 letters written to Gandhiji by just family people sharing their family matters. And Gandhi would reply to them, or else make sure that their secretariat would reply to each and every message. If you want to talk and argue and debate with Gandhi, you can just go to his ashram where he was living on that particular time and walk with him on the morning or evening walk. And if Gandhi thought that your conversation is worth public attention, he would publish your thoughts or your letter in his magazines and newspapers, even if it was against him. Last thing, which I really admire about Gandhi, is his ability to laugh and humor. How wonderful that would be if teachers in our classroom can also laugh. Sometimes we miss laughter, isn't it so? Two incidents I'd like to quote here. The very first one is one fine day in Ahmedabad in Sabarmati Ashram on the fine Monday. Monday was the day when Gandhiji used to keep mom. He used to be in silence. So Sarojini Naidu ji decides that today kuch bhi ho jaye, I want to talk to Gandhiji and I'll make sure that he speaks. So she goes, approaches Gandhiji on very fine Monday, and Gandhiji is sitting in the mall. She enters the room where Gandhi Bapu was sitting, and he said, "Oh, Bapu, do you know what did I see today? You just can't believe." Surprisingly, Gandhiji looks at her and questions at what without speaking, and said, "Bapuji, today I saw the ugliest man on the planet." Again, Gandhiji was in surprise. What? He said, "Yes, Bapuji, आज तो मैंने ना दुनिया का सबसे ugly इंसान देखा." So Gandhi takes the pencil and the notebook which was kept next to him and he writes, "Do you mean second?" Question mark. That means that he considered himself as the most ugliest man on the planet, and whoever Sarojini Naidu encountered that morning could be second one. But the second one, which is also very quite cute, romantic, is one French reporter visited Gandhiji in Aga Khan Palace when Ba and Bapuji was there in Pune in Aga Khan Palace. First of all, this French reporter approaches Ba and asks, "Ba, I want to ask you a question." "Yes, what is the question?" He said, "Ba, can you tell me who is the most handsome man on the planet?" So Ba थोड़ा शर्मा के अपना पल्लू ऐसे करके कहते हैं, "Of course, your Bapu." So in curiosity, the French reporter goes to Gandhiji and said, "Bapu, can you tell me who is the most beautiful woman on this planet?" And of course, Gandhiji smiled and replied that और कोई नहीं, आपकी ही बा. And this anecdote is mentioned by his secretary Desai ji. So these are the few qualities which I really like, and there can be more of it. Few days ago, I was giving a talk on Gandhiji, and one of the youth asked me in the Q&A session that there are so many mistakes which I can't find in Gandhi's life. I do not agree to so many of things. What do you have to say about it? And I replied, saying that, "Have you read Gandhi's autobiography?" He said, "Yes, of course I have read it." I said, "Okay, what is the name? What's the title of Gandhi's autobiography?" He said, "It is My Experiment with Truth." And I said, "Yes, here is your answer." He never called himself that he has found the truth. His life and his teachings are an experiment, open to the world. If you want to apply, try it out as an experiment in a laboratory of your life. He never called himself as a conclusion of the truth, but it was always an experiment of truth. This is Gandhiji. In classrooms, if we can include all these teachings in our education system and in leadership, I think we can have definitely more diverse and inclusive and smiling society of tomorrow. Now, I would like to invite two of the students from Vidya School Gurgaon to share the thoughts. The very first one is Vanshika, who is from 11th standard and she wants to be a lawyer. Let's hear her out.
The Gandhian principles which have impacted the world all over and have helped Gandhiji become a global brand ambassador of social upliftment. He was a man of grit who adopted a novel way of fighting colonialists using satyagraha or peaceful protest. This protest method had a wide-reaching impact in all the areas where imperialism had planted itself. People were inspired by looking at struggle of this man and they had incorporated it into their lives. Gandhiji Nai Talim was a great methodology that included head, heart and hands. Education of the head meant intellectual development. Education of heart is inculcation of moral and ethical values. Education of hands implied dignity of manual labor. All these three core principles of Nai Talim combine together to produce a great citizen of the 21st century, India. We at Vidya strive all the three, the head, the heart and the hands. And I am blessed to be a part of Vidya and we are all the children of Gandhiji. I wish you a very happy Gandhi Jayanti. Thank you.
Fantastic, Yanshika. This gives us the hope. And now, here is Dipanshu, again from the 11th standard, who is one of the brightest students of his class. Here is the message from Dipanshu for all of us on Gandhi Jayanti.
We are living in a very challenging and trying times. Both the health of individual as well as health of nation where economies are adversely affected. How is Gandhiji relevant in such a situation? I believe that Gandhiji and his philosophy and personal examples are very relevant in a situation of crisis. Gandhiji believed that the true test of character of an individual or a nation come only when they underwent a crisis and a calamity at the individual level. We have to follow Gandhiji's regimens of discipline. We have to wear masks. We have to maintain social distancing. We have to avoid crowded places. We have to maintain personal hygiene. Gandhiji was a discipliner. All of us can learn from his example. Cases of COVID are going up alarmingly, mainly because we have become careless. We cannot afford carelessness and we must follow Gandhiji's examples of living simple life and disciplined life. Coming to the economy, Gandhiji believed that the country could develop only if its villages were developed. He wanted India to progress through the development of its rural cottage industries because nearly 70% of India still lives in its villages. Today, our agriculture is in crisis. A farmer are committing suicides. The remedy lies in what Gandhiji said. Let us turn our attention from the cities and the industries to the villages and agriculture. Gandhiji's message is universal and timeless. We have to pay attention to what he was saying. We have to adapt his principle to meet the needs in the 21st century. Happy Gandhi Jayanti and thank you.
Fantastic, isn't it? Our future is indeed bright if we have students like Yashika and Dipanshu leading us. Now, it is my great honor and privilege to invite Dr. Meenakshi and Vinita ji to have a conversation on leadership, education, their vision on both of it, nutrition, environment, and of course, Gandhi. Before they come in, why I'm personally excited about this. Do you know why? But the reason is Mahatma Ji was the point 0.1, the first Gandhi. The second version of Gandhi was the leaders whom he personally nurtured and motivated. But today, many of us have not seen Gandhi. But when we look at the life of Rashmi ji, or Meenakshi ji, or Vinita ji, we could just get some glimpse that how the great leader and their life would be. So here is my great pleasure and honor to present in front of all of you Gandhi 3.0, Dr. Meenakshi and Vinita ji. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ankit, and wonderful to hear the students from Vidya. In fact, they could have carried on this conversation and we could have been the listeners. It was that good. So without further ado, because I know we're running a little bit behind on time, but actually let me start with where the students have wonderfully left off, which is the classroom, and ask you about what were the influences of school, of parents, of teachers, of Gandhi in school and Gandhi in primary school?
Thank you, Vinita. It's a great honor to be here today. I want to salute, first of all, the Vidya community and Rashmi Mishra, her vision, and the teachers and the students who make this such a vibrant space. You and I have often spoken about it, and we've marveled at the energy that Rashmi and her team bring to this amazing enterprise. Um, I was just listening to both Sumitra ji and Arun ji, and they were very, very prescient about the fact that the foundational years are so important, and the kind of experiences that young people have with parents, with parenting, with their teachers, and so on, can really be a make or break kind of situation for them. It can steer them to great heights, or it can send them down the road of despondency. And in a sense, Gandhi, why are we here today? Because we really are entering the universe of Gandhi, which is such a wide kaleidoscope of experiences, and we have to enter it with humility and awe, because it's a complex world, and each of us has to appropriate for us, ourselves, our own Gandhi. Because anybody who's committed to being in touch with their humanity becomes inevitably a sort of a participant in Gandhi's experiments with truth, as Ankit so eloquently spoke to us about. You know, Gandhi's, one of his first influences, of course, was his mother, Putli Bhai. And as you know, she was a very devout woman. She used to fast very often. And all the children would look out, run out to see when the moon would come out so that she could end her fast. And very often that didn't quite happen. And so she continued fasting. And I think one of Gandhi's lessons about the discipline of fasting came from his mother. Interestingly, although he was a little he was not very happy with her views on this little boy called Uka, who used to come into their house, you know, this untouchable boy who would come into their house to clean the toilets. And the family was not very keen to have Gandhi interact with him. But that was a lesson that he carried later into his life and must have made a great impression on him, the exclusions that existed in society. The other thing was that the Gandhi family, I think, had a kind of yen for standing up and being somewhat difficult and not entirely compliant. His grandfather was a prime minister in the state of Porbandar. And then because of some political intrigues, he had to move to Junagadh. And when he went there, he saluted the Nawab with his left hand, and that drew some consternation, as you know, Vinita. And he says, well, my right hand is pledged to Porbandar. So that was the sense of loyalty that he had learned. His own relationship with his father, as you know, is a very profound one, a very deeply, shall I say, both anchoring one as well as unsettling one at times. Because you know, when he was a little boy, he had fallen into what would be considered bad company and did have some not very wholesome habits, and he incurred huge debts. And once Gandhi had picked up a little gold coin from the house, and you know what? His father read the letter, sat on the bed, sighed, and just tore it up. And after that, it made such an indelible impact on Gandhi's conscience, because conscience is a big theme in everything that he does, the inner voice, conscience, and so on, that from that day onward, he vowed that he would never steal, never speak the untruth. And that was the kind of impact that his father had on him. The second big influence, of course, much later in his life, was John Ruskin. And Ruskin had written this amazing book called Unto This Last. And it is really about how simple living, an equitable society, a society of justice, and a society of sharing, and a society that believes in the individual merging with the good of the community was an important influence. And I think, Vinita, and you have visited South Africa, so you would know, I think that was really the impetus for his setting up the Phoenix Farm as a community of people who lived simply, who lived in prayer, who worked for the community, and so on, and who believed in honesty and justice. The other great influence, I think, was Count Leo Tolstoy. Gandhi exchanged several letters with him. Even though he was a count, he had completely declassed himself. And he was the one who actually planted in Gandhi early enough the idea of non-cooperation and, and non-violent resistance. Because he had felt that the enslavement of the Indian people by an imperialist power was really because they hadn't stood up. And instead of using violence or terrorist methods, that they should really use what they had in their shall I say, tradition, which was non-cooperation. And that is where Gandhi picked up this notion and worked on it till it became known as full-blown satyagraha. And the other, I think, important influence, of course, much later in his life, was Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who actually told Gandhi that you have to come out when you come back to India, and he did in 1915, that you have to really get to know your country. And you have to mingle with the people, you have to get to know them, because unless you know the pulse of India, you really do not have the legitimacy to speak on their behalf or to represent them. And so there were these very, very many, I'll say, positive influences on Gandhi. But there was one not so good influence, which was a teacher. And I know we all have wonderful teachers at Vidya, but this one stays with us because once when he was in school, the education inspector, Mr. Giles, had come round to inspect the performance of the school. And everybody was asked to do a little bit of a piece of writing. And Gandhi had spelt the word kettle wrong, Ketle. This was his first year in high school. And the teacher, his teacher who was doing the rounds, was trying to prompt him to change his spelling so that the inspector would go away impressed. And he slipped him a little note. He tried to draw his attention, but Gandhi sat steadfastly and said, "Are you trying to make me change what I have done? That is something I cannot do." So you see the early signs of leadership, the ability to stand up for the truth, the ability to listen to the inner voice, the ability to looking at simple living and what they call simple living, high thinking, the ability to fast, the ability to develop what was later known as soul power. But Vinita, you are the person who's done so much work on leadership. You've trained leaders, you have written on it, you've spoken about it from diverse platforms. You've been to South Africa, and I'm sure you visited the whatever remains of the Tolstoy farm and so on. So how did Gandhi resonate with you as you were crafting your own vocabulary on leadership? It'd be lovely to hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great segue. There's so much one can say about Gandhi and leadership because, here was an individual and a mind that was so expansive. So I could talk for a long time on Gandhi and leadership, but let me talk about a few aspects of leadership that to me seem to be so relevant and something that I have thought about and something I've distilled over a period of time. And as you said, I was very, very fortunate to spend not 21 years that Gandhi spent in South Africa, but 2 years in South Africa, went and saw, the farm where his ideas originated, all the things that he did in Peter Maritzburg, etc. But when one thinks about leadership, I think Gandhi said it in his own words best as he could. My life is my message. And that has really caused me to think about leadership as a verb. It is what we do, it is our behavior, it is not what we say. And again, it was Gandhi who said, true happiness is when what you think, what you feel, and what you do are in harmony. And he lived his life. So a couple of very unique leadership characteristics of Gandhi would be, first of all, his character. It's something that we don't talk about very much. But what do we mean by character? Character is, the anecdote that you related in school. It would be so easy for a child in class 1 to, put 2 T's instead of 1 T and get on with it. But it didn't. In Gandhi's case, that character is what really defined his concept of leadership, his idea of leadership, his behavior of leadership. In his mind, there was conviction around truthfulness, there was conviction around nonviolence, there was conviction around the equality of religion, caste, everything. And again, these ideas are not something that he was born with. The other characteristic of Gandhi as a leader that I think is so exceptional is Gandhi was willing to listen. Gandhi was willing to, he traveled the country, yes, spurred by Gokhaleji. He traveled the country. He didn't come after 21 years from Africa, South Africa, and say, I know what India needs. He spent time traveling. He went and lived in the villages of India. He went and lived with the people that he was concerned about. And I think that is a unique ability and unique characteristic of leadership. This ability to listen, understand, and then, come to a conclusion or judgment or whatever. So it is about his character. It is about his deep conviction, which is, and his indomitable will that don't change. But most of all, it is reflected in his behavior. I think all of this enabled him to understand the complexities of India, to understand the complexities of India in 1915. What we say about leaders today is, leadership is about recognizing reality, giving hope, and showing a way forward. Gandhi was the ultimate strategist. He knew the pulse of India. He knew what he was up against. As a leader, he envisioned what an independent or a free India was going to be. People followed him. I mean, how many of our leaders actually stop and listen today? How many of us stop and listen today? So I think there is so much to take out of Gandhi and leadership. I will end by saying another great characteristic of leadership, which is a characteristic of Gandhiji, was that he looked at a situation, but he dimensionalized it in very refreshing and very innovative ways. You know, the whole concept of satyagraha is an innovation. It is an innovation in how we bring about transformation. He was a social transformer, and he used the same conviction of truthfulness, equality, satyagraha to do what he did. And let me end with an example of what I mean. You know, his amazing ability to reframe an issue. You know, I mean, Ankit mentioned this as well. Gandhi was a prolific writer. He was a prolific reader. You know, another great quality of leadership, this curiosity of mind. He was reading all the time. I heard somewhere that he donated 10,000 books to the first library in Ahmedabad. That's the number of books he had. And knowing Gandhiji, he would have read them all. Not like some of us who have lots of books, which we still have to read. But, you know, he also was a prolific letter writer. So he writes to Hitler. And I remember reading that letter and that making such an indelible impression on me, where he says that he's, of course, persuading Hitler to not go to war or to stop the war. He was already in war. And he said, even if you win the war, it doesn't mean you are right. It just means that your ability to destroy is greater than somebody else's. That is what leadership is. That is what leaders do. So, you know, I mean, I just think there is just so much to take away. But most of all, it is behavior. It is what he did. Gandhiji never expected anybody else to do what he was not ready to do. So with that, I want to turn to you, Meenakshi, and build on this whole idea of leadership and responsibility in the Gandhi way.
Thank you. You said so much, which resonates so deeply with so many of us around here today. You know, what you mentioned about his ability to make despair unconvincing and hope practical rings, because that is really the hallmark of a true leader. He also anticipated, he had an integrative vision. He could anticipate an idea whose time had come and give it form, give it substance, and also engage with it and bring many contours to it. As you said, satyagraha. You know, the original idea was of duragraha, which is protest. But he's not only talking about what you oppose, but not what you stand against, but what you stand for. So part of the, you know, the engagement in any satyagraha was also always the constructive program. So it never had just an oppositional part to it. It had great preparation. And as he said, Satyagraha, the relentless pursuit of truth. You know that he had, from starting with God is truth, he moved to truth is God.
Yes.
And that whole movement, as you rightly said, he overturned the notion of power. Not power as pushing down, but pulling up. He said, no one can really humiliate you without your consent. That's where non-cooperation as an idea of, you know, standing up for who you are, for your dignity, for your humanity. You talked about transparency and you said, my life is my message. And, you know, it's really interesting how transparent he was, even up to the point of talking about his weaknesses at the age of 50, how he felt he slipped a little bit. We don't have to discuss that right now, but we all know. And his amazing charisma really was built on his communication style of thinking, speaking, and doing in unison, an integrated vision where what he said was also what he thought and what he did. And, you know, he was not a great looker. He didn't have that kind of charisma. And, you know, as Sarojini Naidu used to call him Mickey Mouse. Very often refer to him as Mickey Mouse. But the point is that when he first began to speak, his first case in Bombay that he got on his return after his being cleared in the bar, his return from England, was a disaster. He could not say a single sentence, but gradually he grew in eloquence. So when he spoke at the house of Tayyab Seth in South Africa, And later on, and there was this, he had been asked to go, when he went to London, the second roundtable conference, Mahadev Desai was asked, how is it that Gandhi ji can speak for 2 hours without notes, non-stop, and move and stir people? And Mahadev Desai said exactly what you did, because what he said, he meant, what he meant, he did, and what he thought, and he felt. So the heart was very important. And you talked about ethicality. You said about the whole ends and means debate, that you cannot use violent means to fulfill positive ends. So that was another very big important issue. The other thing was empathy. Empathy. Atma Upamya is what he called it. Exchanging yourself with others. As was Bhayavarjana, which he used, which was you need courage to lead. You know, here was a man who took on the might of the biggest empire that the world had ever known. The other thing was, as you said, being one with the people. When he went to Madurai sometime, I think it was in 1915, he was to address this big gathering. And he had been there the day before, and he had found that most of the people there didn't have enough clothes to cover themselves. So the next day, when Mr. Rajan, who was actually translating his work into Tamil, came to fetch him for this big public meeting, and he saw Gandhiji in a loincloth. And he said, aren't you going to get ready? So he said, I am ready, because this is the way India dresses, and this is the way I'm going to dress. And you know, Gandhiji's whole thing with dressing, his sartorial taste, we know all about it. How he was quite a dandy in England. He wore very, fairly expensive clothes and so on. But let me just quickly wind this up. I know we are running out of time. I think the whole idea of empathy, being able to be in the shoes of the other person, and I'll end here with a very small, and the ability to think immediately at the moment of the long-term repercussions of anything that you do. You know, he was waiting for a train at a train station. And in those days, the trains would only stop at stations where the British were either getting off the train or getting on the train. So it just slowed down and it didn't stop. Gandhi ran to clamber onto the train, and he dropped one of his sandals. And immediately after that, he threw away his other sandal. And so somebody who was on the train asked him, what did you do that for? He said, one is not a pair. Anyone who finds that one sandal will need the other one. So that ability, this natural reflex of empathy is something that is so. And then finally, as you said, the ability to turn a challenge into an opportunity. He got thrown off that train in South Africa. I was traveling first class, and of course you visited that place, which still carries the plaque, which says that Gandhi was thrown off the train here. And he refused to move out. But what did that do? He lit the fuse for social dynamite. And after him, in 1958, Rosa Parks did precisely the same thing. Right? She refused to get off that segregated bus, and the civil rights movement began. And some people say, Rosa sat so that Martin could walk, and Martin walked so that Obama could run. So the long-term repercussions, the people he influenced, Nelson Mandela, the Dalai Lama, people in Czechoslovakia, Poland, the kind of impact, Baba Amte, the kind of impact that he had across generations, across locales, across events. And finally, of course, his great sense of humor. Nowadays our leaders take themselves so seriously. Gandhiji always had that sense of humor. So when Churchill referred to him as a half-naked fakir, he wrote to Churchill and said, I'm told that you are concerned about me being a half-naked fakir. My ambition is to be a fully naked fakir and a true fakir. But in the meantime, could you use me to serve your citizens, your subjects better? And then somebody asked him, what do you think about Western civilization? He said, I think it will be a great idea. Somebody asked him, Gandhiji, why do you travel third class? Because he said, since there's no fourth class. So there are any number of things. The ability to course correct. If you've made a mistake, you correct course and you acknowledge, like he did by withdrawing the non-cooperation movement after the Chauri Chaura incident where there was violence. So anyway, there are so many examples. But what you said, we come back to that leadership. And I always dine out on this aphorism of yours, Vinita, that leadership is a verb, how you act. how you behave, rather than something that is a concept that's fixed in time. Thank you. But I want to ask you, because you are so passionate about the environment and you work so much for the environment. I know you plant trees for your friends on their birthdays. What a unique way to make a gift. And Gandhi made several such gifts. So how does Gandhi's life, how does his message resonate for you today in the context of the ecological disasters that we face? And what would be your takeaway?
Again, Meenakshi, as you said, he was so far ahead of his time. That again is a fantastic quality of leadership, which is not just envisioning and insight, but also the foresight. And again, Gandhi's message is so clear. I mean, Gandhi put in pithy sentences what would take anybody else, 4 or 5 sentences, or maybe even a paragraph to write. I look at the encapsulation of what he meant by the environment, and that is again something that all of us are familiar with, when he said there is enough in this world or on this planet for everybody's need, but not for everybody's greed. His own life, I keep coming back to it, his own life is such an example. He conserved water when he was having a bath. The great stories about when he wrote, there wasn't a millimeter of space, forget about on any paper, on every envelope that he wrote. And Gandhiji wrote 31,000 letters. He probably received another 10,000 or whatever. But he made, reduce, reuse, and recycle cool before the environmentalists started talking about it. I also say Gandhi made global cool before we all realized that global was cool. We don't realize that Gandhi left India to study when he was hardly 18 years old. He came back for a few years. Then he went and spent 21 years in South Africa. His expansiveness, his curiosity, his whole idea of finding out more, was something which so shaped his thoughts and his actions. The other thing which he said, which if I remember correctly, since we are again talking to, students and teachers and so on, Gandhi was a perennial student. He said something like, live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever. Now, if that isn't a wonderful encapsulation of, that curiosity. And he interacted, look at the number of people he interacted with, whether it was the environment or anything else. He interacted with musicians, he interacted with scholars, he interacted with political leaders. He found enough time to say that when I admire the wonders of a sunset or the beauty of the moon, my soul expands in the worship of the Creator. So for him, creation, nature, harmony, who he was, his inner voice, that conscience that guides what you do and what you say, is something which is, even if we can reflect on it, and even if we can, engage with it, his ability to engage with different ideas. I mean, for 20 years, he and Ambedkar wrote to each other, disagreeing. For several years, he and Tagore wrote to each other, disagreeing on some things. I mean, not disagreeing in totality, but, I think that's another landmark quality of leadership. And that is the ability to actually engage with someone who thinks differently from you and continue that engagement, so that out of that engagement comes understanding, and not that I won an argument or somebody else won an argument. I think with this, we are out of time. And I want to actually, we could go on, Meenakshi, you and I, and when Gandhiji is the topic, We haven't even scratched the surface. We could go on for a very long time, but I'm very mindful of time. And I do want to hand it over to Aditi Mishra to close and to see if there are any questions before we end. Aditi, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinita. Thank you, MG. This was absolutely brilliant. We could have actually just gone on and on. But all good things must end. I don't see any questions on the chat box, so I'll open it to the audience. If anyone has any question at all, they can ask. But I think I have a question for both of you. Either of you can answer. In today's day, when we talk about Gandhi and we talk about the relevance of Gandhi, and I'm talking as a practitioner, we sometimes get slightly disbelieving looks from young children. And then there are the diehards like me who will carry on, talking about how important ahimsa is, how important cleanliness is of the mind, body, spirit, everything. How do we bridge this gap of disbelief, of this reluctance to accept that Gandhi is relevant?
Meenakshi goes first. Meenakshi goes first.
Thank you. Aditi, with due respect, I think that is a wrong question. Because anybody, as I said at the opening, Rashmi had quoted Einstein to say that generations from now will scarce believe. The point is that anyone who's concerned about issues of justice, about issues of the inner life, the issues of the connection of the individual with society, the issue of the limitations to rights, the issue of universal responsibility, the issue of interconnectedness, the issue of relationships, willy-nilly already has a Gandhi
inside.
Yeah. It's just a question of actually finding that Gandhi and connecting with your own Gandhi. Because it's the totality of his being, as Vinita said. It's not a construct. It's not an intellectual construct. It is a reflex. It's a metanoia. When knowing and being become integrated in the way you naturally are. So, which is why there's no artifice. There's no artifice. So Gandhi was a vegan much before veganism became popular. He had not an inch of flab on him. He was you would call him, as she said, he was cool before it became fashionable for the environment movement. He walked so many miles, he interacted with so many people. But it was his sense of wonder about his universe, both the immediate, and so, for example, when he said Swaraj and Swadeshi, what did he really mean? It was how you bring the internal world, the universe, in consonance with the external world. How you take responsibility for the proximate before you worry about far pavilions. So, I mean, just while she was talking about the environment, I suddenly remembered there were all these vows that the Satyagrahis took in the ashram of Asteya, non-stealing, non-covetousness, non-accumulation, about respecting all religions, about sparsha bhavana, about inclusivity, about abandoning so-called untouchability, and all of these. So all of these issues impinge on us in very immediate ways. And our response, whether we like it or not, has been touched and impacted by the Gandhian universe in some way. See, Gandhi belongs to the ages. Gandhi is not confined to one nation or one society.
Absolutely.
He is a Yug Purush. He belongs to the ages. Thank you.
Aditi, just to add more dimensionality to that, the fact that and there have been, I don't know how many seminars about Gandhi, not just today, but in this, the fact that 151 years after somebody is born and, 70, whatever, 2 years after, he's died, we are still in an animated conversation around him. We are still discovering what he means. The one word that comes to my mind, which really defines Gandhi in every way, is authenticity. Absolutely. There was, if I could create a poster child for authenticity, it would be Gandhiji and nobody. Because again, as Meenakshi also said, and we've been discussing, there wasn't any difference between his thoughts, his feelings, his actions. And jokingly, I was talking to a friend earlier today. he was just one of those people that, nobody can find a scoop on Gandhi, because everything that had to be told about Gandhi, he told himself.
Absolutely.
I mean, warts and all. Think of it. He
Yeah.
said that you have to be really strong to make yourself vulnerable. It is, again, a very different way of thinking about it. We feel that, people who are weak are vulnerable. He's saying you have to be really strong to make yourself vulnerable, because, you are there to be judged by everybody, for everybody to, take jabs at you or whatever. So I
Yeah.
think it is about Gandhi-ness, if I could coin that term. It is about the essence of Gandhi rather than, following, Gandhi and fasting and so on. There's no point fasting if you don't understand the essence of Gandhi.
The purpose, yeah. So there is another question from Yashika Munjal, who says, what quality is suitable to unite our India, our nation? Because I want my nation to be united.
Can I just give you a quote straight from Gandhi? I think that should respond to him. And Gandhi said, I do not want my house to be walled in on all sides and my windows to be stuffed. I want the culture of all lands to blow about as freely as possible. But I refuse to be blown off my feet by any of them. Mine is not the religion of the prison house. It has room for the least among God's creation, but it is proof against insolent pride of race, religion, or color.
He also said that, the best Hindu, or whatever, maybe not the best, the true Hindu is also a true Christian, is also a true Muslim. He is not looking at religion. Again, we have to remind ourselves that it is our myopic worldview or religious view or view of society that causes us to create boundaries. In Gandhiji's world, there were horizons, there were no boundaries, and everything was inclusive. And when you're willing to engage with everything, you're willing to make everything inclusive, there's nothing that separates.
Absolutely. So I think I'll go right into the vote of thanks now, Rashmi, if that's okay. So I think I speak on behalf of everybody when I say that this hour has been like going through an absolute encyclopedia, starting from Ankit to the two students and then to our iconic MG and Vinita. And I think it's very unfair to be asked to speak after people like Vinita and MG, because I feel I'll fall short, but I will try. So I'll begin my vote of thanks with Sumitra ji, an iconic role model for all of us. And ma'am, your message of Swavalambam and Swachhata and Atmanirbharta resonate with all of us as teachers, as adults, as parents, as students. All of us believe that this is the way forward. And in your absence, ma'am, you are very much present with your strong message. Thank you, Mr. Arun Bharat Ramji, Chairman of SRF Foundation and LSR, patron of the ELSA movement, the ELSA sisterhood, which we are all so proud of. And as the first formal president, thanks to MG, that I was of the ELSA sisterhood when it started 9-10 years ago, I had the good fortune of meeting Arun Bharat Ramji, and I recall his childlike enthusiasm for pushing us into creating this, the ELSA association. MG, how can we thank you as ELSAs? Because I know you never say no to an ELSA. You're iconic. You're everybody's role model. You've mentored so many of us. And if we are just about pale shadows of you, that's enough for us. Thank you very much for being here today and sparing these precious moments, sharing your thoughts with the teachers and the students of Vidya. I'm sure all of us who are part of Vidya are very grateful to you. Vinita and illustrious Elsa, thanks for agreeing to be part of this. Thanks for sharing your views, which are, as a teacher, I almost think you both are teachers, because you've taught us so much in this 1.5 hours. I must thank Ankit. I must thank Yashika and Dipanshu for speaking so beautifully and straight from the heart. The one thing that I will add over here is when you're talking about the Nai Talim, because we've gone to those schools now and Nai Talim is now part of the NEP. It's not just a disassociated education for the head, the heart, and the hand, but a connection between them. So the whole idea of vocational education is soon going to be a reality in our country, something which we all should have done many, many years ago. Thank you, Rashmi, for making me part of this absolutely heartwarming and enlightening session. I don't know where the time went. There is a YouTube link, dear viewers, which you can access, and we'd urge you to share it with your friends, family, relatives, whatever groups you are on, because as you can see, it is a great learning. We'll end today's function event with a beautiful rendition of the 15th century poem Vaishnava Janato, which urges us to recall and feel the pain of others, to feel empathy, to have no pride, to speak no ill, and create, therefore, a brave new world. Thank you very much for being here.
Those were the wonderful students of Vidya. Great,